One of the reasons I believe mistyping and misunderstandings about each type are common is language. And unfortunately, a dictionary definition won't clear things up. I tried, but I'm going to show you what I mean. But before I do, I'm Samantha Mackay. I'm writing a book about mistyping in the Enneagram. I've been doing that for a while. I'd like to get it finished, but I've been fascinated about stereotypes and misunderstandings about types for quite some time. So why does language create confusion around types? Let's start here. Imagine a teacup. You're probably picturing one that you've already seen before. That might be one that's in your kitchen, one that your grandmother owned, or maybe the one the Queen used when having tea with Paddington Bear. But you didn't invent an image from scratch. Your brain pulled from existing content or context first. And that content and context is personal to us and our lived experience. It's subjective, not objective. And that's really key, these two words, subjective and objective. Hold on to that. Because while we're all imagining a teacup, none of us are imagining the same teacup. We have a slightly different mental model. It's subjective. One of our saving graces is that each teacup has tangible similarities. We can all hold on to one. Has a looped handle attached to a vessel that can hold hot liquids. So when we talk about a teacup, there's generally enough crossover or overlap in our mental models to avoid too much of an understanding. This idea of mental models, teacups, misunderstandings, mistypings was first shared with me by Antonia Dodge from Personality Hacker while I was training as a profiler in 2018. I found it really fascinating. I've really held on to it. But now we've talked about teacups, we're going to make it a little trickier. Imagine love. What picture formed in your mind? Was it hugging a partner, playing with a child, taking a cooked meal to a sick friend? Was it creating a garden for local flora and fauna? Was it sitting with someone as they lay dying? There are so many variations about what love means, which creates a lot of nuance in our mental models for love, which is great for poetry and love songs, but can create a lot of confusion when we're talking about love without appreciating that we're using different mental models. While we might believe we each see love objectively as the same thing, it's actually very subjective. The ancient Greeks tried to solve this by creating words to represent different types of love: familial love, passionate love, deep friendship, universal love, playful love, enduring love, self-love, obsessive love. But in modern times, most of us think of love as passionate love or intimate love, these one-on-one relationships that we have with other people. But even inside that mental model, we each have a different or a subjective perspective on what love is or isn't, based on our past experiences, based on our personality, based on a whole lot of things. So what is true is that your mental model is different to my mental model. It's different to the models of the people you spend time with, even the people you love. Unlike teacups, there's nothing tangible we can hold on to in quite the same way when we talk about love. So it's really easy to assume we're operating with the same beliefs, feelings, perspectives, opinions, agenda, or mental model, but we're not. It's possible to have very little crossover in our mental models or subjective beliefs about what love is or isn't. And it's really easy to fall into the trap of thinking we're talking about the same thing when we're actually having a very different conversation, which makes for fascinating conversations about love in relationships. But when it comes to the Enneagram, this is why language is key. It's these differences between subjectivity and objectivity in mental models, which is so key to understanding how mistyping occurs in the Enneagram. And I really wanted to illustrate that words aren't just words. While they may have simple standard definitions in our dictionaries, in our minds, they are linked to complex mental models that include memories, feelings, beliefs, frameworks, sensations, images, smells, sounds, and so much more. And it's not appreciating that our mental models aren't just different, but are subjective that creates confusion and misunderstanding. Okay, so how does this apply to the Enneagram? Well, when you first learnt about the Enneagram, you likely first learnt about each of the 9 types, often being defined by using different keywords for each. So let's say the teacher explained the type 9 was a peacemaker who focuses on maintaining harmony, avoiding conflict, seeing all sides, adapting to others, and who's developed a real strength in diffusing conflict and supporting others. In the Enneagram, these concepts have an objective definition that describes an archetypal energy. But that's not where our brains start. They can't. It's too complex. When we first learn about the Enneagram, our brain has to build a brand new mental model of what each type is and isn't. And it has to build that model from scratch. But it doesn't do that by carefully weighing the definition of each element, considering how that differs for each type, creating unique examples that represent each of the 9 types. That takes too long. It hasn't got that kind of time. And it definitely consumes too much energy without knowing that there's actually going to be a payoff for doing so. So our brains use shortcuts. They build these mental models for each of the 9 types out of existing parts. So when it hears the words avoiding conflict, seeing all sides, adapting to others, our brains or our mind looks for examples from our past where we have done that, of how we have defined or experienced those scenarios. Then we look around the room and compare ourselves and how we see everyone else doing the same. And then all of that is filtered through our existing beliefs about what's okay or not okay when it comes to how to be or act in this environment that you're in or in the other environments. Essentially, our brains are making a quick sketch of how it believes that archetypal pattern would look and act to bring those words to life as a picture, an image, as a mental model inside our minds. And then it compares everything to that sketch. That sketch tells us, well, am I that type or am I not that type? And the thing that blows my mind is that your sketch and my sketch are different, even though the words on the screen, in the books, in the reports are the same. We're still talking about something different. We're not talking about the same type exactly because we're using different sketches. We just think we're talking about the same thing. So our internal sketches of each type will be built based on the culture we grew up in, the type of friends we had growing up, the educational experience we had, type of parents we had and their types and how they acted, and the way our teachers taught us the Enneagram. Now, some of us might never return to that initial sketch. It might remain a simple outline for the rest of our lives. Over time, others might spend time colouring it in, learning types from different sources, listening to panels, sharing their stories, going deeper into the work. Others might refine that initial sketch into a more mature drawing, researching or coaching types from different cultural backgrounds and contexts, maybe being in an inner work group with people of a range of types and experiences, learning how to recognize the differences in the 27 subtypes. Some have spent years becoming a master of shading and dimension, teaching the depth of the Enneagram over years or decades, developing a nuance for recognizing energy patterns, not just to type someone quickly, but from having built a complex understanding of all the variations in each type, as well as all the similarities. But regardless, whenever we're talking about a type, it's through the lens of our sketches at that specific moment in time, whether it's rough or detailed. And I do believe there are objective descriptions for each of the 9 or 27 archetypal energy patterns as described by the Enneagram. But for the most part, all of us are talking, thinking, and teaching from our personal mental models, which are both correct and incorrect at the same time. And one thing I think we learn to do with time is to be able to hold our mental models more lightly. Sure, they get more nuanced, especially if we try and learn from different teachers and we do more work on ourselves. But when we can hold them lightly, we then have different ways of teaching them. We have different ways of recognizing the different cultural overlays, trauma, family program, and all the other nuances that go on. Which is why I think it's so important to continue learning about the Enneagram types, subtypes, instinctual sequences from different sources and teachers, and to continue to expand our understanding of the nuances of each type and having a deeper understanding of ourselves. Because this is so much of where our emotional intelligence and our compassion for ourselves and others comes from. The deeper we can understand ourselves, how we're similar to others and how we're different, the more compassion we can have for ourselves and others. Returning to the type 9, every type avoids conflict. It's not unique to 9s, but the way 9s do it is unique to their deeper motivation. 9s avoid conflict because they forget or are unconscious to their own priorities, opinion, or agenda. They simply don't take a position, so they can never be in conflict. They have a drive to maintain a sense of peace in their inner world and outer world, and they push energy out of their body into the environment around them to create a sense of calm, to help chill everything down. If you've ever noticed that when you're near a 9, you just naturally feel calmer because all their energy is going out to do that. So instead of assuming we have the full picture about each type or about ourselves or anyone we know, I believe a more useful starting place is to question or test our existing assumptions about what a type or subtype is or isn't. This can help refine our mental models, help us figure out what needs to be updated or rechecked. I think the best place to start is to get familiar with the 3 subtypes of each type, to see the contradictions and the differences in each, as well as how they're all still that type as well, which helps us hold more complexity and nuance about each type. And I'll add some links below if you'd like to dive in now. It comes back to language and understanding that when we're talking about each of the types, that we're talking about different things, even though we think we're talking about the same thing. So when it comes to mistyping, it can be really useful to go back and reassess and retest our assumptions that may have been built into our mental models that are actually quite subjective based on personal experience, but might not be objective based on the true or the deeper motivations of each of the archetypal energy patterns of the 9 types or 27 subtypes. Anyway, I know that's a bit nerdy, but I hope that helps with wherever you're at in your Enneagram journey.